Hello, hope everybody's having a good day. My name is Dr. Heather Moore, owner of Total Performance Physical Therapy. Tonight we're talking about pinching pain in the shoulder. This is a common way people like to come in and describe their shoulder pain. It pinches, there's pinching. So let's talk about what it is, why it's happening, what we can do to fix it, and so on and so forth. So pinching pain in the shoulder usually occurs somewhere in this top shoulder region, okay? Usually we don't hear pinching too much down here, and we're going to go over why that is. But usually it happens when you're reaching out to the side, reaching over your head. Not a lot of times do you feel a pinching pain when you are just sitting here at rest. The one time you will feel a pinching pain sitting at rest is if you are not sitting in good posture. So if you're sitting at your work desk and you're slumped over and you're like, ooh, I feel a little pinch, that's because you are slumped forward. So what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about pinching pain in the shoulder? So here we have our arm, and again, I am a PT, I am not an artist, so this is not going to look good. But here we have our arm, all right, and our little hand here. And then we have the shoulder. So what happens is you have your shoulder here and you have your scapula. So back in here, so this is your shoulder blade, which is in the back, all right? Right on top of this bone, which is the humerus, which is your arm bone, okay? So as these come together, there's a muscle that runs through here, all right? And that is part of your rotator cuff. What happens is as this bone up top of your shoulder comes across here, and as this bone, which is your arm bone, as you start to raise it, and I'll draw it a little bit more clearly, as you start to raise the bone, this part is the muscle. As you raise your arm up, this space right here starts to get really narrow. And that actually causes that muscle to become pinched. All right? We call it impingement. It's called impingement because we are actually pinching, we're impinging some of those muscles, some of that muscle coming through there. So as you raise your arm overhead, you're going to get that pinch. What causes this hole right here that's supposed to be here to get smaller? Well, there's a couple things that cause that. First thing is poor posture. So what happens is as you slump forward, okay, you are actually closing off that natural gap that's supposed to be in there. So there's a gap. It's hard to feel. You're not going to feel it. But there's a gap that's supposed to be right in between here, in between your humerus and the bone above it. This bone up top and then your bone down here. There's supposed to be a gap there. As you slump forward, you actually close that gap. If there's no gap for that muscle to go through, you're going to have impingement. You're going to have that pinching feeling. That's what causes part of that, okay? Another thing that can cause that impingement is tendonitis. So here is the nasty part about impingement and pinching in the shoulder. Most people like to ignore it because if they shift around, you gotta get rid of it. And if you ignore it and you don't raise your arm overhead too much, it doesn't really hurt, right? So, but what happens is you will wind up developing a tendonitis. So as that muscle comes up and it goes through that little hole there, okay, and here's the space where this muscle is supposed to sit. As it gets pinched, as it gets squeezed, it's going to become fatter and fatter and fatter because it's becoming inflamed. And it's becoming fatter and fatter and fatter, and there's more tissue in that area because it's irritated. So there's more blood there, there's more substance in there. So instead of fitting nicely in this gap, the muscle can fill up that entire gap. We're not talking about a huge gap. You can barely feel it if you touch it. Okay, we're not talking about a big space. So it's very easily taken up by a muscle that's inflamed, by a tendinitis. All right, so this is kind of the vicious circle that we get into, because as the tendinitis progresses, as that tendon gets more inflamed, that impingement gets worse, because now you're not going to raise your arm overhead to feel that pinching. You might only get to here and it's starting to pinch. Now it might be constant pain as opposed to just a little bit of pain. So it's very important that you pay attention when you just have a little bit of pinching when you're reaching up overhead. It is way less time, way less money to get this fixed than it is when it starts to develop a tendinitis, which then goes to impingement, which then goes to tendinitis. That's when it becomes really hard to fix, because you have to calm down the tendinitis and you have to fix the impingement. What can happen is this tendinitis and this impingement can actually lead to a rotator cuff tear. So most rotator cuff tears do not happen traumatically, meaning they don't happen because you fall down the steps. They don't happen because you had an accident. Most rotator cuff tears happen because, oh, you went to pull your key out of the door and all of a sudden you heard pop and there was your rotator cuff. Or all of a sudden you went to close your door or just lift your arm out to the side and bam, there went your rotator cuff. Okay? Why is that? Because as that space gets smaller, you can actually start, the bone up top here can actually start to literally saw away at the muscle in between there. So if here sits the muscle on top, the bone on top has a little divot there. Here's the muscle. Over time, as that muscle rubs against the bone underneath, it can actually develop a rotator cuff tear. So it's really important not to ignore a pinch in your shoulder. Okay? The other thing that can cause it, and this goes on along the lines of that poor posture, but when I talked about it before, I talked about poor posture more so along the lines of slumping, more so along the lines of being forward in this front position where we're on our phone or we're on our computer. This third one I want to talk about is more of a stress-related posture. I think we can all relate to a little bit of that. A lot of people who have this stress-related posture carry their shoulders like this. They carry their shoulders elevated. It's something that you don't know you're even doing. It takes a lot of work to reverse it, but once it's not hard work, it's just constant reminders. But once you do, you actually are going to be able to reverse the tendinitis and the impingement. When you're walking around like this, okay, again, this bone on the bottom is going to come up and bang into this bone on the top, compressing that muscle. When you raise your shoulders up, everything gets a little bit smaller. Everything gets squeezed, okay? So when you're doing this, you're squeezing that muscle that's coming through there. So that muscle is getting squeezed as you're doing this. Most of us who walk around like this are more like this. You have no idea you're doing it. It's a completely natural posture. And instead of having someone be like, wow, your shoulders are really elevated, it looks normal. But if you tell yourself to drop your shoulders, you find that you drop your shoulders and they go down significantly. This one takes a long time to reverse because you feel normal here and this feels totally weird. As you try and switch it, you literally sometimes will put your shoulders down and within 2 seconds they'll come back up because your muscle memory will force them just to go back up and you'll have no idea you're doing it. So it's a very significant retraining. All right, so let's talk about what we can do to address these things, all right? Again, if you have pinching in your shoulder, you already have impingement, you already have the development of tendinitis, don't ignore it, all right? We offer free consultations. All you have to do is call our office at 215-997-9898 and we'll get you in, but don't ignore it because it can progress into a rotator cuff tear. But if you have just a little bit of pinching, you want to start correcting this right now, poor posture. So one of the first exercises you're going to do is you are going to just squeeze your shoulder blades back, okay, and then forward. This is not a hard exercise. This is not designed to be a hard exercise. This is not something I want you to wait. This is not rows at the gym. All it is just squeezing and then relaxing, all right? This is going to allow you to sit in proper posture and allow you to have the strength to sit in proper posture, all right? When you go to sit down, on your device, when you go to sit down on your computer, you want to roll your shoulders up, back, and you want to drop them down. It's really important that you do this and not this, okay? This is overcorrecting in the other direction. This is getting into proper posture. So make sure that your up, back, and drop them down is here, and you're relaxed. And then you bring all your electronics in to suit you where you are right now. This is very difficult to do if you don't have your electronics set up properly, meaning if you're working off a laptop and your laptop doesn't have a separate monitor and a separate keyboard, okay? Make sure that you have your environment set up so you can sit in good posture. Just don't fool yourself and say, well, I'm just going to sit in good posture. It doesn't matter what my devices look like, because within 15 minutes you're going to get sucked into this posture. All right, so the second one is tendonitis. We need to do everything we can to balance out the muscles. When you have impingement, there's a muscle imbalance going on. So you have a muscle imbalance, and it usually, well, not usually, so the muscle imbalance, meaning some muscles are stronger, some muscles are weaker. With this muscle imbalance, usually the muscles up here, like your upper trap, the muscles on top of your shoulder, okay, are stronger. And the muscles that depress your shoulder, that bring your shoulder down, are weaker, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you just kind of a quick table punch here, but you can just punch the table, okay? You want to make sure your elbow is straight and you're just punching down. This is going to activate everything underneath your arm. If you follow us on YouTube, all you have to do is go to our YouTube channel, Total Performance Physical Therapy. We have several exercises for shoulder strengthening, so I'm not going to go through a ton here, but you can look up all those over there. But you can start with just punching your fist into the table to activate that muscle. You can progress that to sitting on the table and pushing butt off the side. You want to do some rotator cuff exercises to help strengthen the rotator cuff so it supports your shoulder, okay? A good rotator cuff exercise is just laying on your side and rotating your arm up, keeping your elbow next to your side. Really important, you have to keep that elbow next to the side. You're not just lifting it up, and this is one of my favorite worst exercises to do with the band, okay? If you have a band, you can put it here and then bring it across, but again, elbow stays bent, elbow stays glued to the side. But watch our YouTube channel to see more of those shoulder strengthening exercises. And then the final thing that you can do just to correct that poor posture where you're elevated, this is the longest thing that you're going to do. It's the easiest, but it is the longest. You want to set a reminder every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes to check your posture. When you do, you want to just take a deep breath and try and force your shoulders down. It's going to take a lot of time to do this because you are retraining your muscles. It's going to take at least 6 weeks. This is where your muscles want to be. So this feels totally weird. And every time you push them down until they're used to being down, it's going to feel completely weird. But I guarantee you, if you have this type of posture, every 10 minutes when you set your alarm to go off to check that posture, your shoulders are going to be up here, okay? And then you're going to feel them drop all the way down. So it's really, really important that you have that timer set. It's going to drive you nuts. I know this from personal experience. I suffered from super bad headaches because I was walking around like this. It took me 2 months to correct to the fact where every time I didn't check, my shoulders weren't up here. But literally by the end of the day, I was like, okay, I don't even want to look at my shoulders anymore. And generally they were up here. It's just a natural posture that you carry when you have stress. But it absolutely can lead to impingement, and it can lead to a rotator cuff tear. It can also lead to numbness and tingling going down your arm. That is not what we're discussing today, so that has nothing to do with impingement, but those are types of things that can result from this type of posture. If you or someone you know is suffering from shoulder pain or has pinching in the shoulder and wants a free consultation, all you have to do is call our office at 215-997-9898, and we'd be happy to get you in. Thanks, and have a good night.